What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another NBA Rundown, courtesy of Run Pure Bets and Run Pure Sports. Please like and subscribe the video so we continue to bring you top-notch gambling content. Today, I am joined by Tyler and special guest making his debut, JTA's. JT, how we doing today?
What's going on? Spread Tyler. It's my debut here on the Bet Show. Excited to be welcomed in and talk a little bit about DFS as we analyze these games. And it's good to be here. Really good to be here. Beautiful Saturday. Going to be grinding a little. Just made some spring training MLB lineups just because I got nothing else going on, and figured I may as well hone in, get my skills down for the beginning of the season. So, and give my wife a little more fodder to call me a degenerate. So it works out well.
Well, yeah, I'm so excited to have you here because, like you, I'm a fan of Tony Snell and a fan of Telescope. So I think we're going to do pretty well today.
I mean, Tony Snell, we got just before. I mean, you said the magic words, the keys to my heart.
Yeah,
Tony Snell. I mean, I'm thinking about doing this. I'm thinking about hitting up the Braves PR team and saying, look, this is what our site does. I'm based here in Atlanta, and we've become big fans. I mean, 2 of the last 3 games, right? The Hawks are 3-0 now with their new coach. Yep. And 2 of those 3 wins, Tony Snell hitting a 3 almost at the buzzer. This guy, it's not even a resurgence because he was like never a player that did anything. It's kind of like, where the hell was this the last 15 years of your career, Tony? It's crazy.
Yeah, and it was so much fun. I was on the live betting show with the Keg that night, and we had grabbed some Hawks live when they were down. So what a great shot for us, and really capped off our Thursday night quite well. So Tyler, how are you excited? Are you excited today? How you doing?
Yeah, I mean, tough card today, but we could find some spots to make some money.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of yesterday. I mean, like, you can build a model, and I thought that maybe the lines would be a little softer with all the eyes on the college basketball right now. But these lines came pretty close to what I got. So we're going to have to talk through these games and look to find the angles because simply just plugging in the numbers is not going to give you an edge today. So let's go ahead and get started with the first game on the slate. This game's going to start actually in 57 minutes. That's the New York Knicks heading down to Oklahoma City to take on the Thunder in a Saturday afternoon matinee. Tyler, I know that you liked the total on here when it was 213, but by the time you finished your research, it was already down to 208. What are you thinking about this game with Oklahoma City grabbing 4.5 points at home?
I mean, this is another one when you look at the injury report, it's like a page long. I see Rivers out, Peyton out, Mitchell Robinson still out there, Rose out. And then on OKC's side, Baisley out, SGA's out. And, of course, you still don't have their new addition, Mikhailuk from Detroit. So, I mean, this game should be slow-paced. I don't see them scoring many points. I think both offenses sputter. But I just want nothing to do with this game now that that total's dropped below 210. If it was still above 210, I'd go under. But at 208, you just need a little bit of them couple plays where there's no defense late in the game and you'll get screwed.
Yeah, the market kind of priced me out of that one too. So that was definitely a case of you snooze, you lose there. But as we've seen before, it's tough to hit these openers this year with all the injury news. JT, what do you think about this game? And were you surprised that Hamidou Diallo got traded?
I mean, I'm surprised. Not surprised so much that this Oklahoma City team is going to make some changes. I did think that Diallo was a guy that they were looking at for the future, but the trade doesn't really make a whole lot of sense for either team. Detroit is clearly, I think, going to be in tank mode the second half of the season. So it's kind of an odd one. You're kind of just scratch your head like, what's the point of this? I guess Oklahoma City trying to preserve or stack up some draft picks, but obviously that means no Diallo today. And the only impact for DFS is this is a showdown slate, and the big news here is on the Knicks side, where you've got Elf Payton, who was ruled out, which brings Emmanuel Quickley into play. I love watching this kid play. I love it when he gets minutes. He doesn't get them as often because he's a rookie, and Thibodeau kind of really doesn't play those guys all that much. But I think for this slate, I think you're looking at Randall, who's in a great spot. You're looking at Quickley in showdown. And then on the flip side, unfortunately, you have to consider Al Horford with the injuries. You have to consider Maledon. Given that the Knicks' defense against point guards is probably where it's weakest. And then even Isaiah Roby at his price point, I think you can look at for the showdown in this game.
All right, Tyler, I know that you're a Knicks fan, and I know that Knicks fans love Quickly. Did you target Quickly or any other props in this game?
I wish they would post lines for him, but they just, with him being just such a lower player on their team, they just don't post lines for him.
Oh, that's too bad. Okay.
But the one I targeted would be Randall's assist here, over 5.5.
Oh,
I mean,
that's
with
been money all year.
Yeah, that, and plus with no Peyton and no Rose, the offense should run through him. His last 5, he's averaging 6 assists. So I think it's going to be another spot where he just goes out there, he catches that ball like high post, finds a couple guys open for threes, ends the game with like 6 to 8 assists.
All right, I'm looking for that right now on Bookmaker.
Yeah. RJ Barrett, too, has had a higher usage rate with Elf off the court. Elf seems to be kind of not surprising if you know Elf's game, seems to be more of a disruptor to the efficiency of that offense than anything else. And so I joke, I grew up in New York. I'm a recovering Knicks fan, recovering Mets fan, because they just have been so hurtful to me my entire adult life. But when you look at the game and you see Elf ruled out, I get excited because it means just a better brand of basketball, I think, for the Knicks.
Well, I got to ask them, were you a Jets fan too?
Yeah, the trifecta of the worst franchises that you could have be gifted as a child, right? I mean, think about that childhood. After 1986, the greatest year of the Mets franchise, which was fantastic. I still remember that World Series. But after that, it's just been dreadful.
You got to talk our guy Jay out of those 3 fan bases because he's in there. You got to save him.
I mean, you got to, first of all, I got out of New York very early on in my life, went on to my career. I moved out to Texas and LA and then DC. Then I moved back later in life and was able to escape again. If you're still in New York, now is the time to get out. I mean, I'm putting a whole flight crew together to go and actually kidnap my father because he refuses to leave. So, but it's definitely time to bail. They've got a lot of wild things going on in New York these days.
Yeah, those teams might be the only ones that can top my Raiders, Kings, and Oakland A's trifecta there. Because at least the A's make the playoffs here and there. But
at least there's a little glimmer of hope with the Mets. Little glimmer of hope with the Knicks. Little glimmer of hope with the. I'm sure it's going to be dashed, right? I'm sure something wild is going to happen. The Mets will be sold again. Cohen will get indicted for securities fraud or something. Something crazy is going to happen.
Well, speaking of the Knicks, do either of you guys think that they cover today? Tyler, what do you think?
I think they do. I mean, they're going to have the best player on the floor. OKC is going to be without SGA. So this offense is going to have to run through Horford. Mm-hmm. I think they win this game by 5.
What do you think, JT? Do you think Knicks cover today?
Yeah, I think, this is a Knicks team that's been playing well. And the like I said, the injuries that the Knicks have today, I find to be actually helpful to their chances to win. Whereas on the Oklahoma side, you take Gilgeous-Alexander off that team, and it just becomes much harder for them to score points.
Yeah, definitely agree with you there. All right, well, let's move on to the evening, and these will be obviously that's a showdown. So this is where, the new slate will begin for the evening. The first game we'll talk about is the Toronto Raptors, 17-20 on the year, 18-18 against the spread. They're heading to Charlotte to take on the Hornets, 18-18, but 19-16 against the spread. Boy, I mean, who would have thought preseason that Charlotte would have a better record than Toronto in this point of the year? But, they've done great things there. LaMelo Ball is the clear-cut rookie of the year, and the signing of Gordon Hayward, although kind of panned amongst NBA circles, I think it's turned out to be quite well. So Charlotte's doing well. Now they're laying 2.5 here, which seemed a little sneaky to me. But once again, Toronto is still struggling with those COVID protocol violations. Just checking real quick, I see OG Anunoby still out, Patrick McCaw still out, Fred VanVleet, Pascal Siakam, and Malachi Flynn. So we're getting this short-handed Raptors roster. We'll start with you, Tyler. What do you think? Are you laying 2 with the Hornets here?
I am. I just don't think this Toronto team being short-handed can keep up. I mean, you look at their last 6 games, they're 1-5. So, I mean, it's almost like they keep up for the first 3 quarters, and then they just can't go anymore because they're only playing like 8 guys. And if they're bringing anybody else off the bench, they're not of any quality. So the only way I could look in this is Charlotte at that short line.
Yeah, and it's hard to argue there. JT, what do you think? Does Charlotte cover? And talk to us a little bit about the DFS, because the last couple nights with this shorthanded lineup, I've been putting 2 Raptors in there. Norman Powell's giving me the fire, and Kyle Lowry's giving me the ice. Talk to me about the game and what you think of those 2 guys.
Yeah, so Charlotte has been playing well, but they're also playing fast, and that means that they're giving up a lot of fantasy points. They're defensively challenged, to put it mildly, but because they have such scorers and playmakers on offense that have worked together, which in the beginning of the year I really didn't think it was going to. I thought you would have to move one of Rozier or Devontae Graham in order to get Lamar Ball more time, and that hasn't happened, and they've actually worked well together. Kind of funny for DFS purposes, the odd man out most of the time has been Gordon Hayward. On this Toronto team, I think you have to look at them in DFS. The prices didn't move on DraftKings at all. Norman Powell's price went up by $100. He's taking 17, 18, 20 shots, and he's been shooting pretty efficiently. Charlotte gives up some of the most three-point attempts and three-point made percentage in the league. So it's a really good matchup for him. It's also a really good matchup for Chris Boucher, whose price didn't move either. Lowry is the only guy that's priced up. He's 8-7 on DraftKings. I think that's probably a right price for him. Now, don't get me wrong. This Charlotte team can certainly give up a lot of points to point guards. You could see Lowry go for a 55, 60-point night here. So I think you're fine with 2 to 3 Raptors. I think you probably have to have at least 2 Raptors in your lineups tonight. Because Charlotte's fully healthy, it is a little tough to run it back, but P.J. Washington is priced down, and Rozier's price came down on DraftKings to 7-4. Nobody ever plays Terry Rozier, and he's actually having a pretty good year. So those are 2 guys on Charlotte that I'm looking at price-wise that I think are interesting tonight.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. I don't know if I want to go back to the well with Lowry, but Norman Powell seems like that's how I'm going to start my lineup is by throwing him in there. Tyler, this total is 233. You were on the money with unders yesterday. What do you think? Are we going to see some shift to the overs, or are you going for the under here again in this game?
I'm going under here.
Okay.
I would have this one right around 228, so I think it's a little too high.
Okay.
But, I mean, if Toronto is shooting well from beyond the 3 line, it's going to fly over because we all know Charlotte's going to get their points.
Mm-hmm. And Charlotte, and they are one of the worst teams at defending the 3-point line. JT, do you think this game goes over?
Yeah, I think Tyler's right. I think it depends on how the shooting goes. If these guys get hot, especially from beyond the arc, then yeah, I think it can shoot over. I think it can stay close, and I think when these games stay close with 2 teams like this, you get an overtime game here. If you've got 4 or 5 players from this game, you're sitting pretty in the first game of the night, second game of the night here. So it's an interesting game for DFS, no doubt.
All right. Well, that should be a fun one to watch, and I definitely think you gave us some good tidbits to start out with building a strong lineup. This next game will be kind of interesting. I'm seeing the line at 11.5, and that's the Detroit Pistons heading to Brooklyn to take on the Nets with a total of 226. Now, this is the game. This is the type of game where usually I do like to take the Pistons. I've always said on the show a lot when the lines are 6 or more, and you're grabbing the points with the Pistons, it's good because this team plays hard and they don't get blown out. But they're going against the best offense in the league here, maybe with something to prove. Tyler, what do you think? Is this game blowout or can Detroit cover?
I think this one's over before we get to the 4th quarter.
Wow, okay.
I just think Detroit beat Brooklyn in their last matchup. So that'll be everyone's talk for this spot.
Yeah,
I think Brooklyn comes out and just smacks them right in the mouth. And they just finish them off before the 4th quarter and they rest all their guys.
Yeah,
So
and JT, we know that when we have blowouts, that's not always good for DFS. So what do you think? Do you expect a blowout, or are you going to put some of these guys in your lineup?
Yeah, I'm with Tyler here. I mean, the Nets have been playing so well. I mean, it's kind of scary what's going to happen when Durant comes back because it's just these games aren't all that competitive. They just won pretty easily over. I think they won pretty easily over the Celtics. And so, I mean, I was looking at the pricing on the Pistons, but the Pistons have gone into that situation where we talked about earlier, where I don't think they want to win a whole lot of games. So the frustrating thing is they're not expected to be active at the trade deadline. I know they made one minor trade, but Mason Plumlee's back to only playing 25 to 28 minutes. The only guy really playing big minutes on this team is Jeremy Grant. So you could take a shot in DFS with Sadiq Bey at 5'3". He'll, shoot some threes and if they go in, he could pay that tag off. And Delon Wright, Dennis Smith Jr. is going to be away from the team for an unknown period of time due to the health and safety protocols. So you're looking at Delon Wright and then Saben Lee for the only point guards on this team. So Delon Wright at 5'5" is a guy who should play 30 minutes tonight. And if he shoots the ball well and gets his assists, he should get there. The other player that I think is a little bit sneaky on this Detroit team, just because of the fact that they backed down on Mason Plumlee's minutes, is Isaiah Stewart at 3'6". And honestly, this is a game where I think you could look at both backup centers with Nicholas Claxton at only 3'3". Detroit is giving up the most fantasy points to centers over the last month and a half. And DeAndre Jordan just isn't playing big minutes right now unless they absolutely need him. So if I'm making a lineup and looking to fit in some of those guys on Toronto and Charlotte and the Hawks and the Kings game that we'll talk about in a little while, then I might be looking at either an Isaiah Stewart or Nicholas Claxton.
Yeah, those are some great points. And you brought up Saben Lee. And as a guy that's been fading Detroit a lot over the last month, so I've been watching more games than probably I should be watching of the Detroit Pistons this year. Saben Lee minutes have been a bane to my existence because he comes in and he plays quite well for that team. I think that, one of the benefits of taking is you find these young players that maybe nobody knows about, nobody has any expectations for. You give them a chance and they shine and they rise. And then when you build this team and you're building your team, you found a guy that maybe you didn't expect. And to me, Saben Lee seems to be one of those guys. And boy, if you watched Cade Cunningham in Oklahoma State last night, I wouldn't want to win either if I was Detroit. He looked pretty good. Tyler, thoughts on the total and any props? I see a total of 226 here. Tyler, you muted.
At 226, I'd probably lean under. I mean, okay. Brooklyn's been playing a lot better defense lately. So I think they could just hold this Detroit team under 100 points. Mm-hmm. But, I mean, as for props, I'm going right back to the former Piston, Bruce Brown. We're going over 10.5 points.
All right.
He scored over 10 in 6 of his last 7 games. And he's taken 9 to 13 shots in his last 7 games. So, I mean, he's getting the shots up. You just got to make sure they fall. He's playing his former team, so you have that little bit of a revenge narrative for anyone who likes those.
All right. JT, thoughts on the total? And then a lot of times when Tyler gives me an over on the prop, I'll try and put him in my lineup. I'm seeing 5,600, though. That's probably a little too high for Bruce Brown. What do you think?
Yeah, I was just looking to see what he did last time out. He is playing more minutes, but I think in this spot, there's also a chance Brown isn't going to play. He's not the player anymore that's going to get the blowout run. So if they sit their starters midway through the third towards the end there, then that's why I kind of prefer. I think Claxton really is the only guy that I'm looking at from this team, to be perfectly honest. And then you mentioned another couple of good points about Saben Lee. Saben Lee is 3'5". He hasn't been playing a lot of minutes. I think he's going to be overlooked. And in a game where he is the only other point guard, I think he's guaranteed here for 20 to 24 minutes. And at 3'5", we've seen him pay that tag off easily with those kind of minutes. So looking at the backups more in this game for sure.
Yeah, and we love getting those guys at 3'5" in there because that gives you multiple spend-up options. And as we get into later, I think there are some enticing spend-up options. And just one more thing about this game before we move on. Tyler, you mentioned Brooklyn's defense. I mean, do you remember when they were historically bad at one point in this season? And they really haven't done much to turn it around except for maybe up the effort, the time together, and dialing in on some of those the concepts that they're running there. So I think you have to give credit to this Brooklyn team because at one point they were worse than the Kings, and that we know that that's bad. So give Brooklyn credit there for turning things around. This next game, boy, another blowout potential, but boy, I think the spend up option is also in play here, and that's the Milwaukee Bucks laying 10.5 in Washington. Milwaukee 23-14 this year, but only 17-19 against the spread. Obviously, because they're laying these big numbers often, like the 10.5 they're laying tonight. Washington 14-22, 18-18 against the spread. They started covering before they started winning. Now they've kind of got it both together, except for, boy, that was a poor performance by them on Wednesday night against Memphis. That was actually kind of disappointing. Tyler, what are you thinking of this game? Do you think this 10.5 is right? And do you think the total of 241 is too high?
I mean, when I see this matchup, it just screams the Bucks are going to score 120 points here because Washington's going to get them up and down the floor. They're going to get them to shoot their threes. Giannis is going to have a big game. But, I mean, as for the spread, I'd probably lean the Washington side because it has that backdoor potential. And for the total, probably lean under. 239 is a high number.
Yeah, it's up to 241, and it's funny that you mentioned that you think they're going to get 120 because on Bookmaker right now, 125.5 juice to the over for the Milwaukee team totals. So the books and the market agree with you there. And then Westbrook, do we think that he's going to play tonight?
I think there's that slight chance he sits, but I think he, for the most part, plays.
All right. JT, what do you think of this game? The 10.5 and the 241 total.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned it that Washington is coming off two really bad performances. Bad performance last night.
Yeah, it was
actually. I mean, that was. I don't want to say it was surprising. There's been a lot of surprises this year in the NBA, but I really expected that game to be close, and I expected that Brad Beal just laid an absolute clunker last night. So I'd expect that Washington's going to come out and play hard. Washington gives up a ton of fantasy points. I agree with you. I think you can look to Giannis here, even at his $11K price point. Jrue Holiday played his last game without a minutes limit, so I don't think there's a minutes limit here. He did only play 25 minutes, but at 6'5", taking on a team that gives up on the season the most fantasy points to point guards, I think this is a really good spot for Jrue Holiday here. On the Washington side, it's just so difficult to look to anybody on this team besides Russ Westbrook and Bradley Beal, just all the usage there. So Bertans may or may not play. I think he's questionable. He left the game last night and did not come back. If he was going to play, and I knew he was healthy at 4-3 with his ability to hit threes in transition, it would actually be an intriguing spot for him for tournaments. But I do think there's some value in this game on the DFS side. And my number one play here is probably Jrue Holiday at the 6'5" price point in this matchup.
Yeah, and I definitely can't argue with that play at all. Let's get on to this next game, and we'll be talking about your favorite player. JT, so I'll start with you. That's the Sacramento Kings heading down to Atlanta to take on the Hawks. Kings 15-22 now, 15-21 against the spread. Hawks 17-20 and 17-19 against the spread. So pretty close to their actual records. The Kings are catching 4 points on the road with a total of 239. So JT, what do you think? Trey Young, Tony Snell stack?
I mean, do I need to say more?
Yes.
Look at this guy. Look at this guy. Look at this. So I actually went because it's, like I said, it's become this thing where, and you guys know the backstory, right? So one night we put up cores on the Run Pure Sports DFS side. So all the coordinators, we take turns throughout the week, and I had a day where I had to put up a core, which is basically 4 or 5 players that I'm starting my lineup with. And Tony Snell was min price, which means he was $3,000 on DraftKings. He was in a good matchup. I noticed his minutes had ticked up. These guys gave me all sorts of grief and pain. And he didn't do well that night. But the next time they played, he went out and he went for 8x his salary, which is more than what you need to win a tournament. So it became a thing. And then he's actually started to be a key player on this team because of injuries. And so I went and I was like, you know what? I'm going to get a Tony Snell fathead. Can you believe they don't make Tony Snell fatheads? I mean,
that's unbelievable.
You just can't purchase one.
Unbelievable.
So anyway, I love this game. I think this game, a beautiful total, a very close spread. 2 teams that are fighting. They're playing very hard. The Hawks have been playing slightly better defense, not much better, but slightly better defense. And I think there's just mispricing all over this game. I think if you look at the one thing I will say, it's been fun the last, let's say, 3 weeks since the Kings have had some injuries. Whiteside's away from the team. Tyrese Halliburton has been out, and Luke Walton was on the hot seat. And so he's condensed his rotations, which is exactly what we want for DFS. That means that Buddy, as I call him, Buddy Hield. I know that you're supposed to say it Buddy Hield. I say it the right way. So Buddy Hield, his price hasn't moved. He's been playing big minutes and being allowed to take big shots. He's been taking 18, 19 shots a game. He's been actually hitting those shots. At 6'6", the only worry I have is Halliburton is back now. He only played 18 minutes his first game out. I expect he's going to get a few more. Hopefully those minutes come at the expense of some of the other bench guys and not Buddy tonight, because at 6'6", he's got a perfect price point for this matchup. De'Aaron Fox, 9'2", great price point. You go to the Hawks side. It's been tougher because the minutes have been spread out, and Tony Snell's minutes are going to come down because Bogdanovich is healthy and Gallinari is healthy now. So those guys are going to get more of his minutes. But tonight, we played Clint Capella the last time out and talked about how this team is fully healthy. But Collins at 6.5 on DraftKings, Capella at 7.5 on DraftKings. This is just a great matchup for the Hawks. It's a great matchup for the Kings. And I think you want to have some pieces here of this game tonight.
Yeah, and just going through some of the local press clippings because I'm out here in Sacramento, I don't think they're going to ramp up Halliburton too much more. So I would say that probably 24 is going to be his ceiling. I think that he's going to be between the 18 and 22 range for at least the next week. They know what they have in the kid, and they're definitely not going to try and risk it, especially since the playoffs seem all but out of reach here for the Sacramento Kings. Tyler, I know we were opposite here. I actually, and I don't like the Kings very often. I'm pretty keen to fade them. But I thought that the 4 points might be valuable in a game that I think that's going to be really close. But I know you like the Hawks. Why don't you tell everybody why?
I just think they've been playing a lot better defense lately. This is the first game of a 6-game road trip for Sacramento. Mm-hmm. So I think it'll be their first game in the East. So I think they lose this one. The pace, Sacramento's been getting up and down the floor, but they dropped. They were in top 5 in pace. I think it was as of 2 weeks ago. Mm-hmm. You look at last week, now they're 13th. So the game
that
slowing
was
down.
Weird too.
Yeah, I know, it's surprising.
Yeah.
But they're not playing any defense. So I think Atlanta could just have their way with this team. Like those two big men down low, Bagley and Holmes, I don't think they stand a chance against Collins and Capella. And if Fox tries to speed this game up against Trey Young, he's just going to cause him to shoot more threes. And if those start falling, this score is just going to inflate.
All right. Yeah, make a pretty good argument there. Hey, JT, so there's a guy for the Kings that I think is going to be really valuable on the trade market if they drop him, but he's sitting at 6,800 tonight, and that's Harrison Barnes. What do you think of that price point for Harrison? Because he seems to be pretty consistent with his stat lines over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, and Barnes is he might be Luke Walton's favorite player on the team, which
definitely
is interesting. There's really one of the few guarantees in NBA this year is Harrison Barnes is going to get his 36 minutes almost every night. Mm-hmm. And the Hawks have been, like I said, and Tyler talked about it too, Hawks have been better defensively. They haven't been the absolute sieve that they were for the better part of the last 3 seasons. I think a lot of what you're going to see from Nate McMillan is shoring up that defense and allowing them to be more competitive because they have an offense to compete with almost anybody with the pieces that they have. It's just they haven't been able to stop anyone. Barnes at 6'8", that's more of a cash play for me. Not much interest for me in tournaments, even though I know he's going to be out there. I would much rather try and get De'Aaron Fox because if the Kings have a chance to win this game, it's going to have to be Fox and it's going to have to be Buddy that make the shots and keep it close.
All right, great points there. Tyler, you've been on a string of unders. Are you going to do it with the Kings and the Hawks at 239?
No, there's just no way I can take it under in a Kings
All right.
game.
It ends. The streak ends. And I'd have to agree with you there. Whenever I see the Kings, I like to go over. And the Hawks, were a sneaky under team earlier in the year. Because they were such an over team last year. They did slow down the pace a little. And like you mentioned, the defense has been getting better with this team. And if anyone remembers Nate McMillan from his playing days, he was a pretty good defensive guard. So not a surprise that he can get in there and get those guys going in the right track as far as getting stopped. So should be a fun game. Tyler and I are on opposite sides, and Tyler actually likes the over. So that's been a change of pace for what's been going on recently here on the rundown. The next game I know is a game that Tyler also had strong feelings about. It's the Portland Trailblazers heading to Minnesota to take on the Timberwolves. The Timberwolves, fresh off a beating of the New Orleans Pelicans, which kind of shocked everybody. I mentioned to Tyler before we started, I do like what Chris Finch is doing, getting some of these younger guys involved in the Timberwolves rotation here. I'm talking about Noel and Jaden McDaniels. Both have been playing pretty well lately. I like their extra minutes, and of course, to me, I think more Anthony Edwards usage is a great thing. I think his potential is so much higher than D'Angelo Russell. I think that injury might have been a blessing in disguise. But regardless, they're coming off a big win. Now they're getting 5 points at home against the Trailblazers team that, boy, they really blew that game against Phoenix the other night. They were in control the whole game, and then they just Phoenix couldn't miss in the fourth quarter, and they took a home loss there in a game that actually meant a lot in the Western Conference division standings. So they're coming off a stinging loss, Tyler, and you like them to bounce back. You want to let everyone know why?
I think they bounce back more of, I think Minnesota takes the night off after that big win.
Letdown spot?
Yeah, letdown spot for Minnesota. I mean, would they win by 30?
It was a lot. We stopped watching. We were doing the live show, and we were going to jump in on the Pelicans, and the live line just kept getting higher and higher. And then we realized we're not going to jump in on this game. It's not turning around.
Yeah, I mean, them young guys are out there having fun.
Yeah.
They never have fun on the floor playing for Minnesota.
Yeah.
So I just think they come out flat-footed tonight. I think Portland comes out after that stinging loss to Phoenix that you talked about. I think they come out and just smash them in the first half. And then there's just no chance for Minnesota to even get back into this game. And at that short of a spread, I think it's Portland or pass for me.
All right. Yeah, I was leaning towards taking the points here, but I definitely don't love it. JT, I read a nice article this morning about Anthony Edwards, and he was really giving a lot of credit to Ricky Rubio about helping him with leadership and kind of changing the mantle of the team, from Rubio's leadership to Edwards' leadership. I think Russell being out has had a lot to do with it because Edwards is getting so much more time as the primary ball handler. So give us some of your thoughts on this game, if you would take the points, and what you think of the total of 234.5.
Yeah, I kind of agree that this is a good spot for Portland to get right, and a spot where Minnesota, coming off like I said, surprising performance down in New Orleans, is primed to lay an egg here. So, looking at it, I like the Portland side. I don't think if this game goes the way I expect it to go that it's going to get to the over. Portland's another team that's been playing not great defense, but a little better than they have historically. And I think there's some spots here that you could look at for rebounds on the Portland side. Robert Covington is 5'6" on DraftKings. Gary Trent's a guy that's really tough to play because he's just kind of got that same floor and ceiling are both right around 30, but down at 5'4", I think he's not bad. And on the Minnesota side, Anthony Edwards is one of, him and Towns are really the two guys who consistently get those 30 to 34 minutes. And I played Edwards a couple of games ago, and he wasn't doing well, but he just got the minutes there at the end, and eventually he got there. So 6'5", this is a good matchup for him. Going to have the ball in his hands quite a bit. So those are kind of the pieces. I have to see who starts. Jalen Noel had a great game last game out. He's up to 4'6". I don't expect him to repeat that performance here. So starters will be important. Derek Jones Jr. also down to 4'4". On the Portland side, he starts. That's a pretty good price for a starter with his athleticism. And then one last thing, because I didn't mention it on the last game, and I don't want to not mention Trey Young in that matchup. I think that's a matchup where if you're not going to, or maybe even if you are with some of the values that are out there, if you're going to play a Giannis and you're going to play a Jrue Holiday, then I think you can fit Trey Young. That's a great matchup for him as well.
Assuming you have the money, do you like Young more than Fox in that game?
No, probably not. And here's why. Because with the Hawks fully healthy, I think that Fox has a better path to an absolute ceiling game than Young does. If Young hits his threes, and obviously you can hit your threes against a team like Sacramento.
Yes, you can.
he could go for. They could both go for 70 points in this matchup. One of the routes I'm looking at is pairing a 2v3 on that game. So Capella, Collins, Trey, and maybe running it back and seeing if I could find the value to do it, just because I feel that game is probably a bit above, just a bit above the Charlotte-Toronto game in terms of fantasy environment tonight. And I think Toronto may be a little bit more popular. People are coming around to the fact that Nick Nurse is playing those starters a ton of minutes. And I hope that the Atlanta-Sacramento game goes a little bit overlooked. And I hope that some of these values on the Portland side go a little bit overlooked tonight.
Would you be putting Lillard in there, or is that just too expensive?
Not the way that I expect
right now.
this game to go. If Lillard at this price point, at the 10-7 price point, needs a back and forth where the last 6 minutes of the fourth quarter are where he's going to get you from 55 to 70. I don't see that type of game here tonight in Minnesota.
Yeah, definitely. So, yeah, I think with so many spend-up options, I don't know if I would be spending up for Lillard. Even though there's the blowout potential at that price, I might even prefer Giannis because I'm getting so many of the other stats, the rebounds and probably more assists. So that's definitely a lot of good options here tonight, though, when you're building your lineups. And I think can see people going back and forth quite often before lock. So should be having a lot of fun. Speaking of a lot of fun, I think this next game is the most intriguing game of the night and could have the most playoff potential as well. It's the Dallas Mavericks at 19-17, turning things around, 16-20 against the spread, taking on the Denver Nuggets, 22-15 and 17-20 against the spread. One of those against the spreads last night was one of my picks. I had them to cover the 3.5. They fell short. It was really a weird ending to the game. It's so funny. I felt confident they were going to cover all game, and they just didn't get it done. But they did get the win, and now they head home to take on a Dallas team that's been playing quite well as well. Let's see, what was their most recent game? Although they did lose to Oklahoma City. Oh, but that was when they sat KP and Luka. And then before that, they beat San Antonio at full strength, and they covered in that game. So Dallas has been playing pretty well. We can pretty much throw that Oklahoma City loss out the window. They pretty much scheduled it by sitting Luka as well. So we'll start with you, Tyler. What do you think? The line right now is 1.5, so you basically pick the winner. Who do you like, Dallas or Denver?
After the injury news that Jokic is now questionable,
Wait,
I love Dallas. Yeah, 6 minutes ago.
Oh, wow.
So,
thank you for adding that in. Yeah,
I kind of love the Dallas first half look now.
Oh, wow.
They're going to get him at like +1 or +0.5. I think they're winning at halftime in this one. And I think
how much is he worth the line? If he's out, right? This line moves to like Dallas -6, right?
I'd say maybe Dallas -4 since it's an away game.
Yeah,
but yeah,
he's been their whole team.
If you like Dallas, now's the time to take him before he gets announced out. And it is a back-to-back for Denver, so he may sit with the injury recovery.
Well, this game is definitely a chance to plug what's going on over at Run Pure Sports as they go all the way to lock, because this game is going to be the perfect example. Because talk about pivoting. If Jokic is rolled out, a lot of these guys on the Dallas side are going to be a lot more intriguing. I can't even imagine the usage that Murray and Porter would get if he ends up sitting out here. So, JT, why don't you talk to me about this game real quick and maybe going through a couple of the scenarios, with Jokic in and with Jokic out.
Yeah, so the midday questionable has about, I want to say, somewhere around an 85%, right? 85% meant that the guy's going to sit when they come up.
Comes out that late.
Yeah, when they come up on that, because it wasn't after the game last night. It's a midday cue. Usually means they're out. The other guy, that's huge, right? Take Jokic away from that team. There's not just the minutes, but the usage and the shots to go around. But they also ruled Monty Morris as questionable now as well. So you have to think that Monty Morris is going to sit. Looks like Jermichael Green is probable. So Green will be back. Millsap, I guess, is going to play. So, yeah, I think the two guys that you look at right off the bat are Jamal Murray. He's 8-2 on DraftKings. That is a price that I'm not worried about with Jokic out especially. And then Porter's price actually went down from yesterday to today. It's only $7K on DraftKings. So it's a game that I wasn't even looking at before. And now that's the news that Jokic brings is now you almost want to think about, do you have to play Murray? Do you have to play Porter? Because assuming the game's going to stay somewhat competitive, you're now even maybe interested in a Porzingis bring back without Jokic there. So changes the game quite a bit. Barton down to 5-2 as well on DraftKings.
Yeah, that was the one I was going to bring up. I think that Barton becomes the real must-play at only 5-2, and he's been playing well lately.
Yeah, so I can never call Will Barton a must-play because
okay, that's fair. Maybe I'm exaggerating.
He's just incredibly inconsistent. It's like you almost want to play him after he shoots like 1 for 12,
Yeah.
And he did have a good game last night. But that price point 5-2 with the usage that is going to be available, I think especially if both Nikola and Morris are out, I'm not going to have a ton of interest. Maybe a little bit of interest in Millsap just because of how poor the Mavs are on the interior. But really, for me, it'll be looking at Murray and Porter and then Barton on this side, and then Doncic at 10-6. I don't love that price in this matchup, but I am intrigued by Porzingis a little bit.
Interesting. Now, Tyler, you have been Mr. Under the last couple of days, but if Jokic sits, I would think the pace goes up, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I think it goes up if he sits.
Would you be interested in over then if that news comes out?
Yeah, I think so. Well, I see the numbers already changed. It's Dallas -2, and the totals dropped to 225.
That's funny that they're dropping the total with Jokic out. I wonder if they just think the Nuggets won't have the firepower, which I actually disagree with. I think the Nuggets are still going to score. I think that they're just going to be quicker up and down the court and maybe lacking some leadership there in the half-court sets towards the end of the game. It'll be interesting to see if Murray defers to Porter and gets some shots in there, or if it just turns into the Jamal Murray show if it's really close there towards the end of the game. So, boy, what was a fascinating game. I think I think it still is interesting with Jokic sits, although I would definitely give Dallas the edge there. Any more thoughts on this game before we hit the last one of the night?
No, just the one piece about Murray's usage without Jokic is, I don't have the number in front of me, but he turns into something like a 1.5 to 1.65 fantasy point per minute guy. And I think that price tag is, a lot of people are going to be looking at it and like, I don't want to play an A2 Jamal Murray. He's a different player with Jokic off the court.
Well, when it comes down to it, I mean, even Porter Jr., as talented as he is, he hasn't been the best shot creator. He works best, cutting to the basket, relying on his teammates, being the pick man in the pick and roll. And Murray can create his own shot. He's going to be using the pick and roll quite often. And, as much as we know he loves to jack up the shots too, he doesn't necessarily ball hog too much. So it's not like he freezes his teammates out or engenders ill will, because of too much ball hogging. I think that when he does become the lead guy, he does find a nice balance. But these guys all know, hey, 10 seconds to go on the shot clock, give it to Murray. He's going to get us a shot that will be a somewhat quality look. So, yeah, I think I'd be all over Jamal Murray if that news comes out. So just another reason to tune into Run Pure Sports. They got the free show in the evening, and then for the members, you'll be going live up to lock with Holden and JSU, and just watching JSU disseminate all this information so quickly. It's just joy to watch. Plus, you guys have a great time while you're at it. So I'll definitely be tuning in tonight to find out about all this last-second news. Let's go to the last game on the card tonight. That is the Indiana Pacers heading down to Phoenix to take on the Suns. The Pacers coming off that 5-point loss last night to LA. Boy, I thought they were going to cover. I'm glad I didn't play it. I would have been heartbroken because I didn't have the best Friday night to begin with. So they had a tough loss. Big news for them tonight, of course, is the return of Karis Levert, who was quite effective with the Nets before this whole trade and surgery and thing happened. Don't think he'll get too many minutes. My guess, and I didn't read anything too specific, but my guess is he would be capped at 20 tonight. But it'll be interesting to see how effective he is and whose minutes those eat into. The Phoenix Suns have just been fantastic. I talked earlier in the show about their shooting in the fourth quarter against Portland. And, boy, they kind of put the league on notice because if they shoot like that, they're a legitimate contender to go to the finals. I was so impressed with that performance, the way they closed that game in the fourth quarter against the Trailblazers. Now they head home to take on a Pacers team who've lost 6 of their last 7 games. And the only win in that streak was against the Cleveland Cavaliers. So that's not the best. The Pacers are a team I was high on earlier in the year, but they have been disappointing. Now they get a weapon back. JT, what do you think? Would you grab Pacers +7, or do you think Phoenix blows them out?
This is a tough spot for Indiana against a team that plays really, really good defense. They've been clicking offensively. They're a fully healthy team. And it's always interesting when these teams get, and not just a healthy player coming back, but Karis Levert's entirely new to that team, right?
Exactly.
So rotations are going to be different. Not exactly sure how they're going to mix him in. You talked about, and I agree, probably some type of high teen, maybe 20-minute limit on him. It's just going to change everything for that team. Obviously, that's going to mean fewer minutes for guys like TJ McConnell, McDermott, all these guys. So from a DFS perspective, this is not a game that I have a ton of interest in, just because you have two fully healthy teams in a very slow, what I expect to be a slower pace game that's going to be filled with pretty good defense on Phoenix's side. If there are two guys that I'm looking at in this game, and I don't even know if I'll get there, just because there's so many guys in spots where they're getting usage bumps, and that's what we look for in DFS. But I will say Miles Turner only played 28 minutes last night. He comes down. His price now 5.9 on DraftKings. Under 6K on DraftKings for Turner. That's been a spot where he's smashed. He's usually getting in the 40 to 45 point range. Don't know what the correlation is there, but basically when he gets under 6K, I get interested. And then the minutes haven't been there because he's had a couple of tough matchups, but DeAndre Ayton at 6'3", an athletic big against this Indiana team, which Big T always talks about the athletic bigs against this Indiana team. And I think DeAndre Ayton at 6'3" is just too cheap for this matchup. Other than that, yeah, Paul and Booker always have that upside, but they kind of take away from each other's ceilings. So more cash plays than I see them being viable in tournaments. I'm not going to be looking to play them over the Toronto guys. I'm not going to be looking to play them over any of the guys that we talked about. I'm not going to look to play them over Jrue Holiday, or certainly not Trey or Fox. So it's just a hard spot this game tonight outside of Ayton and maybe Turner in tournaments if I'm playing more than one lineup.
All right, great breakdown. Tyler, talk about this Phoenix Suns team. So the big story is Chris Paul, the addition to the team, and how much he's really helped turn this talented team into a winning team. But for NBA diehards like you and me, the story has been Dario Saric, right? The guy's got one of the best plus minuses in the league. Like, who would have thought that they would be that effective with that lineup in the floor? Monty Williams has noticed. The fans have noticed. Saric is now closing the games and not Aiden. Just give me your thoughts on what you expect tonight, and if you think that Phoenix -7 is the right call.
I mean, I think it is. I mean, Saric just helped stretch the floor at the end of them games. It just gives them another perimeter shooter. And with Cam Johnson out, I mean, it's nice to have that other three-point shooter on the floor. But this being a back-to-back for Indy and them trying to integrate Levert into their system for the first time, I just think they completely just disregard this game and they try and use it as just like, here, Levert, get used to playing with these guys, and then we'll get you like working into practice. So I think this has big blow-up potential for Phoenix. I just think CP3 and them guards.
He's a heavy player that could create his own shot. Do you think that makes it easier for him to integrate in, or do you think there's still going to be issues?
I think it makes it a little easier, but we seen when Oladipo went out for this team, and then they got used to playing without him, and then the moment he stepped back on the floor, they sputtered.
Season, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I could see that happening here where we're talking about this Indiana team next week, and it's like, oh, well, they've looked bad for the past 4 games since Levert's gotten back.
Yeah, and I'll be interested to see if Phoenix attacks Levert, when they're on offense and he's on defense, because, boy, getting back to NBA game speed, there's no way to simulate it. They even talk about the practices and the scrimmages don't get you ready. So be interested to see how he does in his debut tonight. I think I agree with you on laying the points here. I'm seeing a total of 224. Are you gonna continue your under streak?
Yeah, I'll go under here. I just think
Go ahead.
I said I'll go under here. I just think Indiana is just going to be score maybe like 100 to 105,
yeah,
and then you would need Phoenix to just put up 120 to put that number over. So I don't think that happens.
Yeah, one of the slower paced teams in the league, the Phoenix Suns. JT, do you agree? Do you think this game goes under?
Yeah, that's why this is one of my least favorite games outside of maybe those two guys.
Yeah, and hey, that's pretty great for you too. Get your lineup done out of the way, and then you make the other guys catch you. I know that Big T's always talking about that when you guys do the show together. So, that makes all of the games today, which means it is time for our best bet segment. We'll start with our the new member of the team, JT, making his first appearance here on the show. Let's give out the first best bet: side, total, or prop. What are you thinking?
Man, so I'm unprepared for this. Now I gotta dig in and just pick one out really quickly. All right,
Go Tyler real quick.
Hey, go to Tyler because I want to take a look here.
Yeah, I should have warned him a little more before we went on that the best bet section is what everybody,
pulled the rug out
on so watches the show for. Tyler, what are you going for here? Because I have a feeling that I'm going to go the opposite of the one that you picked because I think that we've kind of circled the same two games.
I don't know about that one because after that news, I'm taking Dallas first half.
Oh, okay. Well, then you left two games open for me. Fantastic.
Yeah, I think they cover that first half number. It's minus half a point after the Jokic news. So all you need for them is to be winning at halftime. I think there's a very good chance of that tonight.
First half, and that kind of that's nice. You know, we haven't done many first half bets on here. But that can be a fun way to attack the games, especially the games with the bigger spread. Obviously, this game isn't a bigger spread, but, always want to keep that in your arsenal if you don't want to lay, like, say, for example, on the Milwaukee game. You might not want to lay the 11 or what's the other game with the big spread? The Nets and the Pistons, right? You might go for a first half there as well. So, JT, we gave you a little time. Give us a bet.
Yeah, I'm going to go with a prop here. Talked about how I like the Sacramento-Atlanta game, and in particular, John Collins and Clint Capella. Collins, points, rebounds, assists, over 27.5. It's a minus 103 right now. I think he gets past that. I think he gets over 27.5. I think he gets a ton of rebounds against this team. I think he can score against this team. So John Collins, PRA, over 27.5.
All right. I think that's a great pick as well. For my pick, boy, Tyler, we talked about it. I didn't like anything before we started the show, and now I'm just looking, and I think that I got like 3 or 4 good plays. Which one will we make official? Let's go ahead and take the last game we talked about, the Phoenix Suns. I'll go ahead and lay the 7 points against the tired Pacers team, trying to integrate a new player who may or may not fit in too well. And we talked about it in the game, and we're quoting a little from our buddy Big T. Hey, this is the type of big men that give this big base team in Indiana, right? I mean, the success of their team is based on the success of Sabonis and Turner, right? If Ayton and then Saric can slow them down or just outscore them, I think they're going to have a lot of problems. I think that coming from Los Angeles to Phoenix can be, that's a tough game, high-profile game. Then you go to another game. Another not too well-known fact is Phoenix is one of the few cities that's opened up. So, they can also have fun in Phoenix as well. When they get into town, it's not like just go to the hotel room. They're able to walk around and have some fun. Wouldn't be too surprised if they took advantage of that as well. So I'm going to go ahead and go Phoenix minus 7. So just to go over it real quick, Tyler gave out Dallas first half. JT gave out the Jason Collins over on points, rebounds, and assists, and I'm going to lay the points with the Phoenix Suns. Guys, please head on over to runpurebets.com. Check out everything we have to offer, and while you're there, don't just buy, the middle thing for this much when you can get the large thing, right, for only a little bit more. You go ahead, you bundle it with the Run Pure Sports team. You have access to the whole Discord. You have access to the show up to lock. You have access to all the cores that JT spoke about earlier. That's going to be, even take a DFS noob like me, I'm able to cash. I put in those 5 players. I take a little bit of my NBA knowledge, fill out the lineup, and hey, I got a pretty good lineup, especially when, guys like Tyler and I, we know how to do the high ones, right? We know the matchups we want in the 9K and the 10K range, right? But you need to have those nuggets. You need to fill in your lineup with those guys that only cost 3.5, 4.2, right? And they get you 40 points. That's what gets you in there. And that's what the team at Run Pure Sports will provide you. On the Run Pure Bets team, you will get access to all of Jason's live shows. He has been absolutely crushing NASCAR, does so well in the UFC, and those are some of the most fun shows. Him and Joey Work will be on there live, breaking down each fight beforehand. So, hey, you work all week, you just throw the show on. By the time the last fight ends and the new fight starts, you'll feel like an expert on those two fights as you hear those two guys break it down. JJ's been on an absolute heater in college basketball. I haven't been watching the college basketball. I just pull up the sheet, make the plays, cash. It's been so much fun. We got Score with D, who's been doing fantastic in soccer. HTP helping Tyler and I out, giving out great live plays, great props. Joey Work, UFC, college basketball. The whole team's just been on fire. So please head on over to Run Pure Sports and RunPureBets.com. Combo them together. You won't regret it. Trust me. Thank you guys for joining us. Tyler, you got anything else before we get out of here?
I'm just going to add one more play because I can't leave it on the board.
Oh, let's hear it. I love it.
Portland -5.
People love plays.
I got to add that Portland -5. I thought that's where you were going, but okay. I can't leave it on the board.
No, the other one I was considering was the Charlotte. Charlotte was the one I was going to I was going to take what you didn't take between Phoenix and Charlotte. So, okay, we'll make sure to throw that in the Discord for the Run Pure Bets members that did not able to watch the show today. JT, so much fun having you. We're going to have you back again. Anything else for everybody before we get out of here?
Oh, you guys got me pumped for the slate. I may have to go now and hand build like 150 lineups or something. It's good, good to break my.
That'll definitely give your wife more fodder too, right?
Oh yeah,
you got the spring training and 150 NBA lineups, right?
Yep. She's forcing me to go day drinking now, so I got to roll. I mean, that's kind of the way it is.
All right. Well, we got the Tony Snell appearance in. Hopefully, we'll get a telescope appearance next time. So, thank you very much for joining us. There's the man right there, Tony Snell, the man that cashed for us on the live show on Thursday night. You can be part of that live show too if you join RunPureBets.com. Thank you for watching, everybody.